If you're hearing this, you've probably already found one. Or maybe you're just browsing, looking for a chill down your spine before bed. But let me warn you, as seriously as I can, if you ever see a black notebook, no title, no author, just a single phrase in faded gold lettering that says, "Write your name, if you dare," don't buy it. Don't open it. And above all, don't leave it in your room after midnight, because it writes for you. And once it starts, you can't stop it. No matter how hard you try, no matter how far you run, no matter how desperately you pray. My name is Matthew Angel Herrera. This is my story, the story of how I stopped being me and became its scribe. Before I tell you what happened to me, I need you to understand, I'm not the first. I found records, testimonies, voices from the shadows, and I'm going to read them to you, because they're part of my warning. The first one was from Carmen Delgado. She was 28 when she found it at a flea market in Barcelona in 1987. But she was born in Miami, a Cuban-American literature student. She wrote, My name was Carmen Delgado. I found it in '87. The vendor, an old man with hollow eyes, gave it to me for free. For a reader like you, he said. I never told him I liked to read. I never said a word. The first pages it wrote were about my childhood in Little Havana. Secrets I'd never told anyone. Like how, at 7, I let my little sister drown in the bathtub because I was jealous. My parents thought it was an accident. I let them believe that. Then it started writing about the future. My job at Jackson Memorial Hospital. The patients who'd die because of my negligence. Dr. Ramirez, who'd kill himself after I told him his wife had cancer, when she only had the flu. I tried burning it. The flames passed through it like water. I buried it. It was on my pillow the next morning. I threw it off the cliffs of Sidges into the sea. By dawn, it sat open on my kitchen table, dripping salt water that smelled like rotting flesh. The last page it wrote before I left said, Carmen can't take it anymore. Tonight, she'll swallow every pill in her medicine cabinet. She'll mix them with red wine, the same wine she used to drink with her abuela before she died hating her. Carmen will die smiling, because she'll finally know peace. And the strange thing is, when I read those words, I felt relief. Then there was Detective Inspector James Morrison, Metropolitan Police, London, but born in Boston, former FBI liaison. He recorded this before he disappeared. This testimony is part of classified file Object 47 Anomaly. The notebook came into our possession after a string of inexplicable suicides in Camden. 7 victims in 2 months, all young intellectuals, students, or writers, found dead in circumstances they described in eerie detail days before their deaths. I made the mistake of taking it home to my flat in Hampstead. That first night, I found a new page written in my own handwriting. Inspector Morrison has a secret. In 1987, he falsified evidence to frame an innocent man for the Whitechapel murder. The real killer was his own brother. It was true, every word. For 3 weeks, the notebook documented not just my past crimes, but my future ones. It described with chilling precision how I'd plant drugs in an innocent suspect's apartment, how I'd tamper with witness statements, how I'd become everything I swore to fight. And the worst part? It all happened. I couldn't stop myself. It was like watching someone else puppet my body, make my choices, destroy my life from the inside out. The final entry before I handed the notebook to Senora Elvira read, Morrison will die a coward. But first, he'll ruin 3 more families. His legacy will be pure corruption. And when he finally puts a bullet in his skull at the precinct, no one will mourn him. I turned in my badge the next day, moved to Scotland, change my name. But I know it doesn't matter where I hide. The notebook's words are coming true, one by one. My wife left last week. My son won't speak to me. And every night, I dream of pages turning in the dark. If anyone finds this recording after I'm gone, burn everything. Don't look for the notebook. Don't try to understand it. Just run. And then, Anna Kristina Voskova, but she went by Krista Voss in the U.S. PhD candidate at Charles University, Prague, originally from Chicago. Her words still haunt me. I found the notebook in my professor Dr. Cerny's private library after his mysterious disappearance. It was hidden among medieval manuscripts, as if it had been waiting specifically for me. My dissertation was on cursed objects in Slavic folklore, a topic I chose because my babika used to tell me stories about them. At first, the pages read like an academic diary I'd written myself, detailed notes on my research, theories about supernatural objects manifesting in physical reality. But slowly, the content grew darker, more personal. It began describing conversations I hadn't had yet, decisions I hadn't made, how I'd seduce my best friend's husband, how I'd falsify data in my thesis, how I'd start hearing voices whispering from the corners of my apartment. Then came the visions. Every night, as the pages wrote themselves, I'd lucid dream of a place I can only describe as an infinite library, shelves stretching into darkness, filled with identical black notebooks. In each, I could see a life being rewritten, twisted, destroyed. At the center stood a figure, tall, thin, faceless, dressed in what looked like liquid shadow. Its fingers were too long, ending in sharp points like quills, and when it wrote, the sound was like claws scraping glass. It spoke without words, directly into my mind. Every story needs a narrator, and every narrator needs a story to tell. You are both now. You will write not only your own destruction, but become the instrument that writes others. I realized then, the notebook wasn't just cursed. It was a portal, a bridge between our world and something far older, far hungrier, an entity that feeds on human ruin, collecting tragedies like a librarian collects books. I managed to deliver the notebook to Senora Elvira before the final prediction came true. But it was too late for me. The entity left a piece of itself inside my mind. I hear its voice every night, whispering horror stories I must write. And no matter how hard I resist, my hands move on their own across the page. I've become a channel, a conduit for its will. And I know, very soon, someone else will find one of the notebooks I've written, and the cycle will begin again. Now my turn. I was 22, a literature student at NYU, obsessed with Gothic horror. I believed every old book held a secret, a soul trapped between the pages. I hunted for anonymous manuscripts, abandoned notebooks, anything that felt alive. My best friend was Leo Vasquez, 3 years older than me, with an easy smile and a confidence I secretly envied. We'd spend hours debating the nature of fear, why horror stories fascinate the human mind. It's like you're looking for something specific. He once told me, during one of our late-night talks in my Brooklyn apartment, like you know something's out there, waiting for you. He was right, though neither of us understood just how right. Then there was Carla Mendoza, a student of art and history, with whom I'd had a complicated relationship for the past year. She was beautiful in that melancholic way that reminded me of Gothic heroines. Pale skin, long black hair, green eyes that seemed to hold secrets. We'd broken up 3 months before I found the notebook, after a fight about my unhealthy obsession with death and darkness. It's like you're in love with the idea of tragedy, she'd scream during our final argument. Like you want something terrible to happen, just so you'll have a story to tell. Her words stung, because deep down, I knew she was right. Part of me did crave direct experience with the supernatural. I didn't just want to study horror. I wanted to live it, to be the protagonist of my own terror story. Be careful what you wish for. The night before I found the notebook, I had a strange dream. I stood in an infinite library, shelves stretching beyond sight. Every book was identical, black notebooks with no titles. And I could hear someone writing, the constant scratch of a quill on paper, but I couldn't find the source. In the dream, I picked up one of the notebooks and opened it. The pages were blank, but as I stared, words began appearing on their own. Mateo Angel Herrera is searching for a story. Soon, a story will be searching for him. I woke with my heart pounding and the eerie feeling that someone had been watching me sleep. I looked out the window, but all I saw was my own reflection, pale, hollow-eyed, staring back from the dark glass. That morning, I decided I needed to get out, walk, maybe visit a bookstore. The air in my apartment felt heavy, charged like the calm before a storm. I didn't know I was being led toward my fate, that every step I took brought me closer to the moment that would change my life forever. It was raining that day. Not normal rain, the kind that makes you feel like the sky is weeping for something you don't yet understand, something waiting for you around the corner. Crouched in the dark, the streets were empty, puddles reflecting street lamp light like watery eyes. The air carried that metallic scent that always precedes life-altering events. And then I saw it. The last chapter. The bookstore was wedged between an abandoned cafe and a music shop that looked like it hadn't opened in decades. The building was so old it seemed to lean over the street, like a hunched elder, its red brick facade stained by years of rain and neglect. But something about the place pulled me in like a magnet. The sign was carved wood, painted in gold letters worn down to whispers. The last chapter, Rare and Antiquarian Books, EST 1887. Beneath it, in smaller script, a phrase that sent chills down my spine. Every story must reach its end. In the display window, books were stacked haphazardly, coated in dust that made them look like relics from a lost civilization. Some bore titles in languages I didn't recognize. Others were so decayed their covers were barely legible. But all of them seemed to radiate a solemn antiquity, as if each held secrets better left buried. I pushed the door open. It groaned like a living thing. A golden bell jingled overhead, but the sound was muffled, as if the air inside was too thick for sound to travel normally. The interior of the last chapter felt like stepping into the belly of some ancient, slumbering beast. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, forming narrow corridors that vanished into shifting shadows. The air smelled of mildew, old paper, centuries of accumulated secrets, and something else. A cloying sweetness that reminded me of wilted flowers. Light came from oil lamps and candles placed strategically among the books, casting flickering shadows that made titles seem to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. It was as if the store existed in its own pocket of reality, separated from the outside world by something far stronger than brick walls. Then I heard her voice, rough as sandpaper on old wood, rising from the depths of the earth itself. "Welcome, young Herrera." I turned. From the shadows at the back of the shop emerged Senora Elvira Constanza Vasiliev, though I didn't know her name yet. She was ageless, could have been 60 or 200. Her hair was white as fresh snow, but her eyes were black as bottomless wells. When she looked at me, I felt like she could see straight through my soul to my darkest thoughts. She wore all black, a Victorian dress that looked authentic, not costume, with intricate lace and mother-of-pearl buttons that glowed faintly in the candlelight. Her hands were long and pale, blue veins like rivers on an ancient map, and her rings held stones that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "We've never met," I said, confused. "How do you know my name?" She smiled, a crack forming in ice. "Oh, but we have, dear. I've been waiting for you a very long time. Since you were a boy reading ghost stories under the covers with a flashlight. Since you found that Poe book in your school library and knew you'd found your true calling. Since you started searching for what should never be found." A shiver ran down my spine. Everything she said was true, but how could she know? "What is this place?" I whispered. "The last chapter is many things to many people," she replied, gliding between shelves with impossible grace. "To some, it's just a used bookstore. To others, it's where stories come to die. And to a rare few, like you, it's where stories come to choose their new hosts." She led me through winding aisles, her footsteps silent on wood that creaked loudly under mine. The books we passed seemed to whisper as we neared, a constant, almost imperceptible murmur that raised the hairs on my arms. "My family has guarded this place for 6 generations," she continued, her voice floating in the heavy air. "It began with my great-great-grandfather, Dmitri Vasiliev, in 1887. He was the collector of unique objects, books that shouldn't exist, manuscripts penned by hands long dead, notebooks that wrote their own stories." We stopped before a section where the books looked older, hungrier. A tarnished bronze plaque read, "Special collection for experienced readers only." "Dmitri found his first object in the Paris catacombs," Elvira went on, caressing the spine of a book that definitely wasn't bound in cowhide. "A 13th-century grimoire, supposedly written by a monk who'd made a pact with something that dwells in the darkness between written words. It promised the secrets of eternal life, but at a price. For every year of life granted, it had to consume one complete human story." "Consume?" I asked, though I already feared the answer. "Oh, dear child, that's exactly what it wants you to think." She approached the notebook, but didn't touch it. Instead, she held her pale hands over it, as if feeling the heat it radiated. "This isn't just a notebook, Matthew. It's one of the original 13 shadow books, created in 1349, during the Black Death. Do you know the story of the scribes of death?" I shook my head, but something in my mind stirred, as if I'd heard the name in a forgotten dream. In the monastery of San Bernardino, high in the Italian Alps, there was a brotherhood of monks who recorded the stories of the dying. They believed every life was a book, and if those stories weren't written before death, they'd be lost forever. It was noble work, pious. Elvira began pacing slowly around the shelf, as if performing a ritual. But when the plague reached their region, they were overwhelmed. People died too fast, too many. The monks worked day and night, but it was never enough. So their leader, Brother Malpheus, did something desperate. She stopped and looked straight into my eyes. He summoned an entity from the Akashic Library, a place between dimensions where all possible stories are stored. He begged it to help record the lives being lost. "And what happened?" I asked, though my throat was dry. The entity agreed, but like all ancient, hungry things, it demanded a price. It would create 13 notebooks that could write themselves, recording not just people's pasts, but their futures. But these notebooks wouldn't just record stories, they would direct them. A cold shiver ran down my spine. The 13 monks who received the notebooks first thought they'd been blessed. The books wrote beautiful chronicles of villagers' lives, every detail perfect. But gradually, they noticed something. The predictions in the notebooks always came true. At first, small things. Maria the baker will cut her finger tomorrow while slicing bread. Blacksmith Jorge will argue with his wife about money on Friday. Harmless predictions, fulfilled exactly as written. Elvira moved closer to the notebook. I noticed her hands trembling slightly, but the entity was hungry. It didn't just feed on stories. It fed on agony, fear, the despair of realizing you have no control over your own life. So the predictions grew darker. The notebooks began writing about deaths, betrayals, tragedies. And it all happened. The monks tried to stop it, but it was too late. The notebooks had bonded with their bearers. They couldn't be destroyed, couldn't be abandoned, only transferred. What happened to the monks? I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. They all died, exactly as their notebooks predicted. But before they passed, each managed to give their notebook to someone else. And so the curse began. For over 600 years, these notebooks have passed from hand to hand, writing horror stories, directing tragedies, feeding the entity that created them. I stared at the black notebook on the shelf. It looked ordinary, but now I could feel something emanating from it. A patient, waiting hunger. How many people have? I started. Thousands, she said simply. Over the centuries, thousands have been chosen. Writers, students, intellectuals, people like you, who feel that irresistible pull toward the unknown. But some have resisted, she added. Some found ways to break the connection before it was too late. That's why my family exists. Why we guard these objects. Not to destroy them, but to ensure that when someone is chosen, they at least know the truth of what they face. I reached for the notebook, but Elvira caught my wrist with surprising strength. Don't touch it yet, she warned. Once you do, the bond begins. You must fully understand what you're stepping into. But why me? I asked. Why show me all this? She smiled sadly. Because the notebook already chose you, dear. It's probably been choosing you for years, guiding your interests, your obsessions, your choices. Never wondered why you were so drawn to horror literature? Why you kept searching for mysterious, authorless objects? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. My entire fascination with the supernatural, my thesis, even my breakup with Carla. Had it all been orchestrated by this thing? The entity behind the notebooks is patient, she continued. It can wait decades for the perfect host. And you, with your knowledge of horror fiction, your emotional isolation, your secret longing to experience the supernatural, you're perfect. What if I refuse? What if I just walk away now? Elvira shook her head. The notebook will find its way into your life anyway. Your apartment, your university, the library. Once you're chosen, you can't escape. You can only choose to face your fate with knowledge or in ignorance. I looked at the notebook again. It seemed to watch me, like a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. If I have to face this anyway, I said slowly, I'd rather know the rules of the game. Elvira nodded approvingly. Wise. Then let me tell you about the others I've met personally, so you understand the pattern. She led me to a small room at the back of the shop, hidden behind a black velvet curtain. The chamber was circular, its shelves filled not with books, but with glass jars containing what looked like photographs, letters, and personal items floating in clear liquid. My personal archive, she explained, noticing my confusion. The remnants of those who possessed the notebooks and came to me seeking answers. Each left something behind, a testimony for future bearers. She took a jar containing a photo of a young blonde woman and what looked like a handwritten letter. Sarah Elizabeth Thompson, she murmured. American literature student at Harvard, 1952. Found her notebook at a garage sale in Salem, Massachusetts. Fitting, given the town's history. She opened the jar with silver tongs. The paper was yellowed but pristine, the ink an unsettling reddish hue. "Read it," she ordered, handing me the letter. With trembling hands, I began reading aloud. "To whoever finds this, my name is Sarah Thompson, and if you're reading this, it means the notebook has chosen someone new. I'm writing this on my last day of clarity, before the entity finishes its work on me. The notebook entered my life 6 months ago. At first, I thought it was a gift from fate. It wrote the most beautiful things about my life. Intimate details that made me feel seen, understood in a way I never had before. But gradually, it began writing about things that hadn't happened yet, and they always came true, always. Small things at first. That I'd get a letter from my mother on Tuesday, I did. That my literature professor would mention Emily Dickinson in class, he did. That I'd find a $5 bill in my winter coat, it was there. I thought I had supernatural power. Felt special. Chosen. How foolish I was. Then came the darker predictions. The notebook wrote that my roommate, Janet, would have an accident on the stairs. The next day, she slipped and broke her leg. It wrote that my younger brother would lose his job for stealing from the register. A week later, my mother called in tears, exactly as described. But the most terrifying part was feeling my own personality change. I started enjoying when predictions came true, especially the bad ones. There was a sick satisfaction in watching reality bend to match the notebook's words. Then it started writing about me. How I'd grow cruel to my friends. Lie compulsively. Take pleasure in others' pain. And I could feel those urges growing inside me, like poison seeds planted in my mind. The final entry it wrote was about my death. It says that tomorrow, at 3:33 p.m., I'll jump from the university bell tower. That I'll do it smiling, because I'll finally understand my purpose. To feed the entity with my complete story. But here's my final act of rebellion. I'm writing this with my own hand, my own will. If I'm to die tomorrow, at least I'll leave a warning for the next one. No matter how tempting it seems, no matter how special it makes you feel, the notebook is not your friend. It's a parasite that feeds on human lives. And once it chooses you, it won't let go until you're completely consumed. God help my soul, and yours too. Sarah Elizabeth Thompson, October 24th, 1952. P.S. I can hear it writing right now. Even though the notebook's closed in the other room, it's the sound of my fate being etched onto pages I shouldn't be able to see. The most beautiful and most terrible sound I've ever heard. I finished reading, hands shaking. Did it happen? The prediction about her death. To the letter, Elvira said grimly. Sarah Thompson jumped from Harvard's bell tower at exactly 3:33 p.m. on October 25th, 1952. Witnesses said she was smiling as she fell. She returned the letter to its jar and took another, this one holding a photo of a middle-aged man with glasses and a beard. Dr. Heinrich Zimmermann, German psychiatrist, 1967, thought he could study the notebook scientifically, apply rational methods to understand it. It was instructive to watch pure rationality crumble before absolute irrationality. She pulled out a stack of typewritten notes. His final entries, she explained. Read them. Clinical observations, day 47. Subject, the notebook, designation, anomalous object 1. Observer, Dr. Heinrich Zimmermann. It's clear my traditional scientific methods are wholly inadequate for studying this object. Every hypothesis I form is immediately contradicted by the notebook's behavior. Initially, I theorized the object might function via mechanical precognition, perhaps using quantum principles we don't yet understand. This hypothesis was dismissed when the notebook wrote, "Dar, Zimmerman believes he can comprehend me with his primitive science." How charmingly arrogant. I then considered telepathic influence or mental control. This theory was also rejected when I used an electromagnetic isolation helmet I developed for parapsychology studies. The notebook wrote, "Helmets cannot protect against what has been inside your mind since birth, waiting for this moment." Evidence suggests the notebook doesn't just predict events, it causes them. Or more precisely, it exists in a state where the distinction between prediction and causation is meaningless. I've begun noticing changes in my own behavior. My notes have grown obsessive, hyper-detailed. I work late into the night documenting every interaction with the object. My wife complains I talk in my sleep, always about the notebook. Last night, I discovered I'd written 3 pages of notes about the notebook, with my eyes closed, during what I thought was deep sleep. My handwriting was perfect. My observations coherent. I don't remember writing a single word. I believe the notebook is using me to document my own mental disintegration. I am simultaneously the observer and the subject of this experiment. Final note. I've decided to deliver the notebook to the Vasiliev Library in London. Senora Elvira has experience with such objects. Perhaps she can find someone more suitable to complete the story I began. I can feel the notebook approving this decision, which terrifies me more than anything else I've experienced in this process. The good doctor killed himself 2 days after writing those notes, Elvira said. But he managed to deliver the notebook first. A small victory. She took a 3rd jar, this one containing diary pages and a photo of a dark-haired young woman. Finally, Isabella Rossi, Italian artist, 1983. Her case was particularly interesting. She tried using her artistic creativity to fight the notebook's influence. The diary pages were written in a mix of Italian and English, with tiny sketches in the margins that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. May 15th, 1983. I found it. The perfect muse. This black notebook appeared in my studio 3 days ago, and since then my art has been transcendent. It writes the most beautiful descriptions of my paintings before I even conceive them. It's like having a collaborator who understands my vision better than I do. May 22nd. Something strange. The notebook described a painting I would create called The Weeping Woman in Blue. I had no intention of painting such a thing, but when I stood before my easel this morning, my hands moved on their own. The painting appeared as if by magic, exactly as the notebook described. It's disturbing, but also exhilarating. I feel like I'm channeling something divine. June 3rd. The paintings are getting darker. Today I completed Child in the Shadows, a portrait of a little girl with hollow eyes and a mouth full of teeth, like broken glass. I don't remember deciding to paint this. I don't even like disturbing imagery in art. But God help me. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever created. June 15th. I tried painting something cheerful today. A landscape, flowers and sunlight. But every time I put brush to canvas, the image twisted. The flowers became grasping hands. The sunlight turned sickly yellow. The peaceful meadow became a wasteland of bone. The notebook isn't just changing what I paint. It's changing how I see. Beauty is becoming horror. Light is becoming shadow. June 27th. I understand now. The notebook doesn't just want me to paint dark images. It wants me to become a dark image. Every day I look more like the subjects of my paintings, hollow-eyed, pale, with a smile that never reaches my soul. My final painting will be a self-portrait. The notebook has already described it. Isabella, standing in her studio, surrounded by all her dark creations. She is smiling, but her eyes are empty. In her hand, she holds a paintbrush dripping with what might be paint or blood. Behind her, a shadow figure that looks exactly like her is also painting, creating endless copies of the same dark image. I can see it so clearly. I will paint it tomorrow, and then I will become it. Isabella managed to deliver the notebook before completing that final painting, Elvira said, but the damage was done. She lost all ability to create beautiful art. Everything she touched turned dark and disturbing. She died in an asylum 10 years later, still trying to paint beautiful pictures with her own feces on her cell walls. I looked around the circular room. Dozens of jars lined the shelves, each holding the final remnants of someone chosen by a notebook. There are more, Elvira said, following my gaze. So many stories, so many lives that ended the same way, all following the same pattern. Initial fascination, feeling chosen or special, predictions coming true, gradual personality shifts, and finally, complete consumption. Has no one ever fully resisted? I asked. A few, she admitted, but it takes extraordinary willpower and deep understanding of what they face. That's why I'm telling you all this, Matthew. I want you to have the best chance possible of surviving what's coming. We returned to the main shop. The black notebook still waited on its shelf, but now it seemed different, more real, more hungry. I could feel its attention fixed on me like physical pressure. What are the rules? I asked. If I'm going to face this, I need to know them all. Elvira nodded approvingly. Smart. Very well. Listen carefully. First rule. The moment you touch the notebook, the bond is immediate. You can't test it or experiment. Physical contact is a total, irreversible commitment. I glanced toward the shelf where the notebook waited. It seemed to radiate heat, like a living thing. Second rule. The notebook always tells the truth, but never the whole truth. Its predictions will come true exactly as written, but the interpretation can be deceptive. If it says you'll receive a letter on Tuesday, you will, but it might be a termination notice, a court summons, or something worse. Third rule. You cannot destroy the notebook by conventional means. Fire, water, acid, physical force, none of it works. The notebook exists partially outside our physical reality, so physical destruction methods are useless. She picked up the hand mirror, angling it to reflect the candle flame. Fourth rule. The notebook feeds on intense emotions, especially fear, despair, and the feeling of losing control. The more its predictions affect you, the stronger the bond becomes. Emotional calm can slow the process, but not stop it. Fifth rule. The notebook can only be transferred voluntarily. You can't get rid of it by throwing it away or hiding it. It must be consciously given to someone who willingly accepts it, but doing so makes the original bearer complicit in what happens to the new one. That rule hit me like an icy fist. So everyone who had the notebook before me, they all chose to pass the curse to someone else? Yes, she said simply. It's the corrupting nature of the object. Eventually, even the kindest, most altruistic people reach a point where self-preservation overrides morality. The notebook forces you to choose between your own destruction or betraying another human being. The implication was clear. If I wanted to survive, I'd eventually have to condemn someone else. Sixth rule. The process has 3 distinct phases. Phase 1, seduction. The notebook writes beautiful, revealing things that make the bearer feel special and understood. Phase 2, control. Predictions become specific and unfailingly accurate, demonstrating the notebook's power. Phase 3, consumption. The notebook begins writing the bearer's story, directing their actions toward a specific tragic conclusion. She unrolled the parchment on the table. It was covered in symbols I didn't recognize, but they felt eerily familiar, as if I'd seen them in dreams. 7th rule. There are methods of resistance, but they're extremely difficult. They require absolute willpower, knowledge of specific protective symbols, and most importantly, the ability to do exactly the opposite of what the notebook predicts you'll do. How does that work? I asked, studying the shifting symbols. If the notebook says you'll cry, you must laugh. If it predicts fear, you must find courage. If it says you'll betray a friend, you must protect them with your life. But it's incredibly hard, because the notebook predicts your natural, emotional reaction to events. Resisting means constantly acting against your own nature. 8th rule. The notebook has one weakness. It cannot predict or control actions that are completely irrational or self-contradictory. If you can genuinely go mad, act without logic or pattern, you can temporarily confuse it. That rule unsettled me more than the others. Are you suggesting I drive myself insane on purpose? It's one of the few effective defenses, she replied. But as you can imagine, it's a double-edged sword. Some bearers who tried this tactic succeeded in confusing the notebook, but lost themselves in the process. 9th rule. The entity behind the notebook can manifest physically during the final stages. It appears as a tall, thin figure dressed in liquid shadow, with fingers ending in quill-like points. If you see it, the process is nearly complete. A cold shiver ran down my spine, like some kind of Slender Man. Elvira's eyes lit with surprise. You know that legend? Interesting. Yes, there are similarities. Both entities feed on fear and obsession. Both have that tall, faceless appearance. It's possible they're manifestations of the same class of being, or that one inspired the other stories. The idea that the notebook might be connected to other known horror entities made me feel even smaller, more vulnerable. 10th and final rule. If you can fully resist for one complete lunar cycle, 28 days, without the notebook's major predictions coming true, the bond can be broken. But this has never been achieved by a single bearer. It requires outside help, specific rituals, and extraordinary luck. I studied the diagram more closely. The symbols seemed to shift slightly, rearranging into patterns that almost made sense, then dissolving as soon as I focused on them. These symbols, I said, pointing to the parchment, are they part of the ritual to break the bond? I touched the notebook. It wasn't a rational decision. It was as if my fingers already knew what to do before my mind could catch up. Senora Elvira didn't try to stop me this time. She just nodded, with an ancient sadness in her black eyes. The moment my fingertips brushed the black cover, I felt a heartbeat. Not mine. Deeper. Slower. As if the notebook had a heart buried between its pages. That night, in my apartment, I placed it on my desk. I didn't open it, didn't write my name, but it didn't matter anymore. At 1:17 a.m., I heard the first crack. A page turned by itself. I approached, heart in my throat. Words were appearing slowly, as if written in smoke. Matthew Angel Herrera always wanted to be the protagonist of a horror story. Today, his wish begins to come true. The next day, Carla called. We hadn't spoken since our fight. She said she dreamed of me. She saw me in an infinite library, writing with a pen that bled. She begged me to stop chasing that thing, I so desperately wanted. I hung up. The notebook had already written, "Carlo will try to save him. They will both fail." During the first week, the notebook only revealed secrets. Things only I knew. The book I stole from the NYU library at 16. The poem I never gave Carla. The shameful thought that sometimes I wished Leo didn't exist because his light only made my shadow darker. But in the second week, it started writing the future. On Tuesday, Matthew will find a letter in his mailbox. It will be from his mom in Queens. It will say his father has died. It won't be true yet. On Tuesday, the letter came. My father was alive, but the letter said he died in a car crash. I called home, terrified. My mother scolded me. "Who told you that? He's right here cooking." But that night, as they ate dinner, he suffered a massive heart attack. He died before reaching the hospital. The notebook didn't lie. It just accelerated the truth. I tried burning it. Flames licked the pages, but they didn't char. Instead, new words appeared. Matthew thinks he can escape. How adorable. Soon he'll understand. He doesn't write his story. He only signs it. Leo came to see me. He found me on the floor, surrounded by torn books, eyes bloodshot. "You're losing it," he said. I showed him the notebook. He laughed at first. Then he read a random page. "Leonardo Vasquez will die on Friday. He will fall down the stairs of the psychology building at NYU. No one will hear him scream." His face went pale. "This is a sick joke, Matthew." But on Friday, Leo never made it to class. They found him at the bottom of the stairs, neck broken, eyes wide open, and in his hand, clutched like a talisman, a torn page that read, "I'm sorry, brother. I tried to warn you." I didn't put it there, but the notebook did. I entered the third phase, consumption. I no longer slept. Every night, the notebook wrote while I trembled in bed. My hands moved on their own, scrawling on walls, mirrors, my own arms. Words I didn't recognize, but understood perfectly. The scribe must complete the work. The entity waits in the endless library. Your story will be beautiful. Your agony, eternal. I saw the figure, one pre-dawn hour, as the notebook wrote with the sound of nails on glass. She appeared at the far end of my room, tall, thin, dressed in liquid shadows that writhed like serpents. No face, but she watched me, and in her fingers, long as crow feathers, she held a quill dripping black ink, or blood. I knew then there was no escape, but I remembered Senora Elvira's words. Resisting means acting against your own nature. And my nature was to tell stories. So I did the most irrational thing possible. I took another notebook, ordinary, cheap paper, and wrote feverishly for 3 days and nights. I didn't describe what the cursed notebook said I'd do. I wrote the opposite. I wrote that I'd save Carla, honor Leo's memory, return the cursed book to Senora Elvira, choose not to be a story. The cursed notebook reacted with fury. Pages tore themselves. Ink bled like black tears, and the figure in my room screamed without a mouth, a sound that shattered mirrors and snuffed out the lights. On the night of day 28, the final night of the lunar cycle, I went to the last chapter. Senora Elvira was waiting. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with awe and fear. "No," I replied. "I just changed the ending." I handed her both notebooks, the cursed one and mine. She placed them in a glass jar, along with a lit wick and a symbol from the parchment drawn in salt. The cursed notebook writhed like a wounded animal, but it couldn't escape, because this time the story wasn't its own. Now, I'm free, but I still hear the pages turning in my dreams. The infinite library calls to me. The figure watches from the shelves. So I write this. Not for her, but for you. If you find a black notebook with golden lettering, run. And if it's already too late, write your own story. Even if it costs you your sanity. Even if it costs you your life. Because in the end, that's the only thing that truly belongs to us. The way we choose to end